There are nights I still wake up sweating, the image of her face etched against the ceiling, half in shadow, half in light. Maybe it's because I never really buried that part of my past, or maybe because certain memories have a way of crawling back when you least expect them. What I know for sure is that my life split in two the day I met Emily, and I've never been the same since. I was 32 back then, stuck in a life that felt both steady and suffocating. I worked at a marketing firm in Chicago, the kind of place where everyone wore suits that looked identical and spoke in the same rehearsed enthusiasm. I had friends, I had stability, but I didn't have fire. And then one afternoon, fire walked into my life. It was at a gallery opening. I wasn't supposed to be there at all. A coworker had dragged me along because he didn't want to attend alone. I remember standing there, bored, staring at paintings that looked like pretentious smears of color, when I caught sight of her. Emily was by one of the larger canvases, a glass of red wine in hand, her head tilted as if she were listening to the painting whisper a secret no one else could hear. There was something about the way she stood, calm, assured, almost untouchable, that pulled me in before I could think better of it. She noticed me looking. Instead of pretending not to, she smiled, and it was the kind of smile that suggested she knew exactly what I was thinking. I walked over, nervous but pretending not to be, and asked her what she saw in the painting. She didn't give me some canned answer. She said, "It looks like betrayal. You see how the lines fracture. It's like someone trusted too much and it cost them everything." It hit me harder than I expected. I don't know why. Maybe because betrayal wasn't a word I heard often, but it was a word that carried weight. I told her I didn't see it that way at all, that to me it looked like freedom, like something breaking apart to finally be whole. She tilted her head, studying me with a half-smile, and said, "Maybe we're both right. Betrayal and freedom usually come together." That was Emily, always pulling me into places I hadn't thought to go, always making me believe there was more beneath the surface, and that she was the one holding the map. We talked the entire night. About art, about music, about the kind of dreams you usually keep hidden. She wasn't like the women I'd dated before, who asked safe questions and gave safe answers. She was unpredictable. Sometimes her laugh was genuine, and other times it felt like a shield. I left the gallery with her number saved in my phone, a restless excitement running through me. The first few weeks with Emily were like stepping into a different life. We'd meet at midnight just to drive aimlessly through the city, windows down, music loud. She'd tell me half-stories about her childhood, never quite finishing them, always leaving just enough unanswered for me to lean in closer. She hated routines, hated being pinned down, but when she was with me, she made me feel like I was the exception. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs. The late-night calls she never explained. The way she avoided certain questions, turning them into jokes. The nights she'd disappear and then return with that too bright smile as though daring me to ask where she'd been. But I didn't. I told myself it was just who she was, wild, free, untamed. I convinced myself love was supposed to feel like a storm. And maybe that's what it was. A storm that swept through, leaving me breathless and blind. I didn't see the shadows building at the edges. I didn't notice how much I was giving up, time with friends, focus at work, pieces of myself, just to keep her close. One night she brought me back to that same gallery where we first met. The place was empty, closed, but she somehow had a key. "I know the owner," she said with a mischievous grin, tugging me inside. We stood in front of the painting we'd argued about, the one she said looked like betrayal. She looked at it, then at me, and whispered, "It's funny how things come back around." I asked her what she meant, but she just kissed me instead, hard and urgent, as though covering the words before they escaped. Later, when I held her in the dim light of the gallery, I felt something shift. Something fragile, like glass cracking beneath the weight of truth. I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning of the unraveling. The night the cracks in our perfect illusion started to show, and once they appeared, they spread faster than I could stop them. Emily had a way of making every place feel like it belonged to us, but the gallery night haunted me afterward. There was something in her eyes that evening, something she wouldn't put into words. I tried to forget it, telling myself I was imagining things, but deep down I knew better. Weeks passed and her patterns became harder to ignore. She'd vanish for days, claiming she had last-minute projects, family obligations, or simply needed air. Whenever I pressed for details, she'd smile that disarming smile and ask why I couldn't just trust her. And I did. God help me, I always did. Then came the dinner. We were invited to a gathering at one of her friends' apartments, a sleek loft with a skyline view. I remember walking in, instantly out of place among people who all seemed to know each other. Emily slipped into the crowd like she belonged to it, while I hovered by the drinks table, watching her light up every conversation. She was magnetic, pulling people in effortlessly. But then I noticed something, or rather someone. There was a man across the room, tall, sharp-suited, with an expression that shifted every time Emily laughed. He wasn't just amused. He was familiar with her, intimately so. His eyes tracked her like someone who already had history, not like a stranger charmed for the first time. And when she finally turned to him, her smile faltered for the briefest second before snapping back into place. The rest of the night I couldn't focus. I saw how close they stood, how she leaned in to hear him over the music. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking, that jealousy was poisoning me, but when she touched his arm, something inside me cracked. On the way home, I asked her who he was. She brushed it off. Just an old friend, you worry too much. But her voice was too quick, too rehearsed. That night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how many times I'd chosen to look away rather than confront the truth. The truth came for me regardless. A week later, I stayed late at work, trying to distract myself from the growing unease between us. Around 10, I decided to head home. As I drove, I passed by a quiet restaurant near the river, and through the wide glass windows I saw her. Emily, sitting with him, the same man from the dinner. She wasn't just sitting with him. She was leaning across the table, her hand over his, their faces close enough that anyone watching could see the intimacy. My chest tightened. I pulled over, my hands gripping the steering wheel, debating whether to go inside and confront her. But I didn't. I sat there, watching them laugh, watching her give him the smile I thought was mine alone. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember how I managed to climb into bed and pretend to sleep when she came in hours later, smelling faintly of wine and perfume. She curled up beside me, whispered, "I missed you," and I almost believed it. Almost. The next morning I looked at her differently. Every word, every gesture felt like a puzzle piece that no longer fit. I started noticing things, calls she took in another room, late-night texts she said were work-related, the way she avoided eye contact when I asked about her day. I told myself I needed proof. Without it, she'd only twist my doubts back on me, make me feel paranoid. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. It was cowardly, maybe even unforgivable, but desperation makes you do things you swore you wouldn't. And there it was, messages from him, dozens of them, some playful, some passionate, some so explicit my stomach turned. Plans to meet, secrets shared, words I once believed were mine alone, now given freely to him. I put the phone down, my hands shaking, my chest hollow. Betrayal wasn't an abstract concept anymore. It wasn't some fractured line in a painting. It was real, raw, and sitting in the palm of my hand. But here's the part that surprised me most. I didn't confront her right away. I thought I would. I thought I'd explode, demand answers, end it on the spot. Instead, I stayed silent. I smiled when she walked into the room, pretended nothing was wrong, and carried the knowledge like a blade hidden under my shirt. I wanted to understand. I needed to know why. Why she chose me if she still belonged to someone else. Why she let me fall when she had no intention of catching me. I needed the full truth, even if it burned me alive. So I waited, I watched, and I began to play my own game. The man, his name was Daniel, I discovered. He wasn't just anyone. He was her ex, the one she never mentioned, the ghost that explained so many of her half-stories. And he wasn't just lingering in her past, he was right here in her present. The gallery painting came back to me. Betrayal and freedom usually come together, she'd said. Maybe for her, betrayal was freedom, but for me, it was a chain tightening with every secret I uncovered. What I didn't know then was that the night I found those messages was only the beginning. The real storm hadn't even started. I thought betrayal was the worst thing that could happen to a man, but I hadn't yet learned the art of deception, how it corrodes slowly, feeding on your silence. Carrying her secret without letting her know I knew was like swallowing glass every day. Each smile I forced, each kiss I returned cut me deeper, but I couldn't confront her yet, not until I understood the whole truth. So I started watching. At first it was small things, taking note of the time she left, the excuses she gave, the way her mood shifted after late-night calls. But soon I found myself driving routes I knew she'd take, parking near places I suspected she'd go. I became the kind of man I once despised, jealous, suspicious, lurking in shadows. One night, after she claimed she was meeting a client, I followed her. She drove across town to a quiet street where Daniel was waiting outside his building. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight into his arms. I watched them hold each other as if no one else in the world existed. I should have left. That was the moment any man with dignity would have turned the page, but I couldn't. Instead, I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white, my mind swinging between rage and despair. When she finally went inside with him, I stayed there for hours, staring at the lit window, trying to decide whether to storm in or drive away. In the end, I did nothing. The next morning she came home with coffee and a smile, acting like everything was normal. She kissed my cheek, asked about my plans, and moved through our apartment as if she hadn't just spent the night in another man's bed. I wanted to scream. Instead, I mirrored her act. My silence became my armor, though every wordless moment twisted deeper into madness. The breaking point came a week later. She invited me to a gallery event, different from the first one, smaller, more intimate. I almost refused, but curiosity pulled me along. And there he was again, Daniel, standing at the bar, talking casually with other guests, as if he wasn't a thief in the middle of my life. When Emily saw him, her face lit up in that way she thought she reserved for me. I drank too much that night, trying to drown the storm inside me. At some point, I found myself cornering him in the restroom, my reflection in the mirror almost unrecognizable. "You enjoying yourself?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He smirked as if he'd been expecting me. "She told me you were smart. Guess she was right." That single sentence nearly undid me. The confirmation, the arrogance, the way he claimed her without even saying her name, it all collided inside me. I wanted to hit him, to wipe that smug expression off his face, but I didn't. Instead, I walked out, my chest hollow, my steps heavy. Emily pretended not to notice. She danced with me that night, laughed too loudly, and held my hand just tightly enough to convince others she was mine. But I saw it all for what it was, theater. We were actors in a play she had written, and I no longer knew my role. After that, something inside me changed. I stopped looking for explanations. I stopped begging myself to believe her lies. Instead, I started planning. Not revenge, not yet, but clarity. I needed to confront her in a way she couldn't dodge, a moment where all her masks would shatter. That chance came sooner than I expected. It was late, another night when she claimed to be working late. I sat in the dark apartment, waiting, the phone in my hand with her messages open. When she finally walked in, I didn't greet her. I just asked, "Was it worth it?" She froze, the smile falling instantly. "What are you talking about?" I tossed the phone on the table. The screen lit up, displaying her thread with Daniel. Her face went pale, her hand trembling as she picked it up. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she looked at me and the mask cracked. "You weren't supposed to see that," she whispered. "Then why keep it?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger I could barely control. "Why keep me?" Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't the kind I trusted. They felt rehearsed, another performance. Still, her words caught me off guard. "I loved you," she said. "I still do, but Daniel, he's part of me. He always has been. I thought I could move on, that I could choose a different life with you. But every time I tried, he was there like gravity pulling me back." Her honesty, if it was honesty, hit harder than any denial would have. Because part of me understood. Part of me knew what it was like to be tethered to someone, unable to escape. But that didn't make it less cruel. "So what now?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just sat down, head in her hands, and cried. And I sat across from her, the distance between us wider than any room could measure. That night we didn't touch. We didn't fight. We just existed in silence, broken pieces scattered across the floor, neither of us ready to pick them up. But silence is only temporary. Eventually, choices demand to be made, and Emily's next choice would tear everything apart. The days that followed were a tense dance of proximity and distance. Emily stayed close, but I could feel the invisible walls she erected around herself, walls that I had no key to. Every word she spoke carried weight, every smile felt calculated, and every touch was a reminder of the line between love and deception. I tried to confront her again, gently this time. "Why didn't you tell me about him?" I asked one morning as we sat in the small cafe near my apartment. Sunlight fell through the windows, catching the dust in the air, making the silence between us even heavier. Emily stirred her coffee, looking away. "I thought I could manage it," she said finally, voice low. I wanted to try a life with you, but Daniel, he's complicated. He's dangerous. You wouldn't understand." I wanted to scream. Dangerous. Was that supposed to justify months of deceit, lies, and emotional manipulation? But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and nodded. I was tired of arguing. I needed to see clearly before acting. And so I started following my own rules. I stopped trusting her word. I started watching her every move, nodding patterns, timing messages, keeping her calls in mind. I began piecing together a puzzle she had unknowingly, or maybe deliberately, left incomplete. One evening, I decided to see where she really went when she worked late. I trailed her through the streets, careful to stay hidden in shadows, my pulse drumming in my ears. She arrived at a loft I didn't recognize, climbed the stairs, and entered with Daniel waiting inside. From a window across the street, I saw their conversation unfold. Their hands brushed, they leaned close, whispers punctuating their words. The intimacy was undeniable. But then something shifted. I noticed her glance toward the window. She looked straight at me, or perhaps she thought I wasn't there. A chill ran down my spine. Was she aware of my surveillance? Had she set me up to witness it? I drove home, shaken, aware that the line between love and obsession had already blurred. That night Emily came home, drenched in rain, her hair plastered to her face. She smiled at me, tired but radiant. My stomach twisted. How could someone act so normal after crossing lines that should have shattered trust forever? Weeks later, the answer revealed itself in the most innocuous way. A casual remark about a painting she had made months ago, one she'd always insisted was just a hobby, triggered a memory. The colors, the shadows, the riverbank scene, it wasn't just art. It was a message, a key, a secret she had hidden in plain sight. Curiosity overtook caution. That night I examined the canvas in our apartment. Beneath the paint were faint indentations, barely visible lines that formed a code, a pattern. My hands shook. Could it be possible that everything, the lies, the games, the emotional turmoil, was all connected to something far bigger than me? Emily entered quietly, standing behind me. Her presence, once comforting, now felt like a threat. I could feel the tension vibrating between us. "What are you doing?" she asked softly, though her eyes were sharp, calculating. I turned, holding my gaze. "Trying to understand," I said simply. "Trying to understand why you made me part of all this." Her face tightened for a moment, and then she forced a smile. "Some things aren't meant to be understood," she whispered. I didn't believe her. I never would. Not after the weeks of surveillance, the messages, the glimpses into her double life. That night, I resolved to confront her completely. Not with words, not with pleading, but with evidence. The moment would come soon, I knew. The moment when the entire facade would crumble. And when it did, nothing could prepare either of us for the consequences. Because once the truth is out, it doesn't retreat quietly. It explodes. The confrontation came unexpectedly, in the quiet of a rainy Thursday evening. I had waited for weeks, gathering proof, preparing myself for a conversation I knew could destroy everything. But nothing prepared me for how fragile she seemed when she walked through the door that night. Emily didn't greet me with a kiss or a smile. Instead, she paused in the doorway, sensing the tension in the room. I held the folder of messages, the photographs, and the evidence of her double life in my hands. The air was thick, electric, with all the things left unsaid. "I know," she said, almost a whisper, as if the words alone could carry her confession. I didn't flinch. "You've lied to me," I said simply, voice steady but trembling underneath. "You've been seeing him while pretending to be mine. Why? Was I just a game?" Her eyes filled with tears, not the fake, rehearsed kind, but something raw, something almost human. "I didn't plan it this way," she admitted. I wanted to choose you, but he's part of my life in ways you can't imagine. I tried to stay away, but it wasn't enough." The words should have softened me, should have made me reach for her, forgive her, or collapse in despair. But they didn't. What she had done, what she had allowed, was a fracture in the foundation of everything I believed about love and trust. I set the folder on the table. "It's not about choosing me. It's about honesty. You've taken months of my life, my trust, and given them to someone else." She moved closer, desperation in her hands as they reached toward mine. "Please, I love you, I really do. Don't throw us away." I shook my head. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to drown in her apologies and fall back into the illusion of us. But the evidence was too strong, too real. I couldn't. "I can't," I whispered, the finality in my voice heavier than anything I had ever spoken. "Not after everything." Her shoulders slumped, the fight leaving her in a way that made her human again. But humanity alone could not erase the betrayal. I turned away from her, walked to the door, and opened it. The rain hit my face as if the heavens themselves understood the storm inside me. I left the apartment without looking back, leaving Emily and the life we had almost built behind. Outside, I carried only the knowledge that I had survived her betrayal, that I had not become the shadow she intended me to be. Weeks later, I returned to the gallery where we first met. The painting that had sparked the beginning of our entanglement, the one that whispered betrayal and freedom simultaneously, hung on the wall. I stared at it, understanding for the first time the cruel symmetry of our story. It was beautiful, yes, but it had cost me too much. And yet in leaving, I realized something crucial. Freedom, even when born from heartbreak, is still freedom. I could walk away, rebuild, and perhaps one day trust again. But some scars, some memories would always linger, the echo of a love that had burned too brightly to endure. I left the gallery with the city lights stretching before me. In the silence between the hum of the streets and the distant chatter, I felt a strange sense of relief. Emily was a part of my past, and finally, I could start untangling the knot she had left in my life. Betrayal had taken much from me, but it hadn't taken everything. I was still here, still breathing, and for the first time in months, I believed I could survive the aftermath of love gone wrong. Some nights the memory of her smile still creeps into my thoughts, but now, instead of aching, I simply let it pass, like a river flowing past the riverbank, unstoppable and indifferent. And I know in the deepest part of me that I survived.